Today, I'm going to be sharing categories of makeup that I will no longer be purchasing in the future. It's taken a lot of trial and error over the years to figure out what works and doesn't work for me. And today I'm going to be sharing with you guys what I've learned and how most of these products that are in these categories are for my fantasy self. These are not products that I realistically use in my life on a regular basis, and just knowing what does and doesn't work for me will help me make better purchasing decisions going into the future. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so the first item of makeup that I will not purchase anymore in the future is mascara. And this may come as a shock to you if you haven't watched any of my other videos or if you're new here, but I have been on a journey of trying to figure out whether I even need mascara in my life. And I've come to the conclusion over the past couple months that I do not need to own mascara. And I know for a lot of people, mascara is the one makeup item that they will use on a daily basis. But this is just for me personally, so if you love mascara, then keep on using it. But for me, I've realized that mascara is just not an item that I use regularly enough to warrant having it in my collection. So I have this Merit mascara here, and this is just the little travel size, and I recently decluttered this from my collection because it was very expired, and I realistically only reach for this organically less than 5 times. And I had this for at least a couple of years. And mascara is notorious for expiring quickly and for being something that you don't want to put around your eyes if it's expired. So technically mascara should probably be thrown away every 3 to 6 months. And because I only use mascara for special occasions, I realistically cannot use it up before it expires. So a lot of this mascara just goes to waste. There's still so much of this left that I did not use. And I've decided that I just like how my eyes look without mascara, and it's not something that I need in my life. So mascara is the first item of makeup on this list that I will not be purchasing again in the future. The next item that I've come to realize that I don't need to own in my makeup collection is a super glittery eyeshadow. So I recently purchased these flower nose eyeshadows, and I've made multiple videos on these already, so you've probably heard me talking about them. And when I first purchased this, I was under the impression that I needed the most glittery, wet-looking eyeshadow possible. And I feel like this is something that has gotten into my subconscious from watching a lot of YouTube videos, because I feel like every beauty creator out there that I watch is always trying to find the most wet and sparkly looking eyeshadow. And usually if an eyeshadow isn't as sparkly as they expect it to be, then that is disappointing for them, and that for them is an indication that it is not a good eyeshadow. And when I first got this eyeshadow palette, I was super impressed by how sparkly these toppers were. So especially this one here is so sparkly, and it really is beautiful. I'm not saying that this isn't, and I'm not saying that there's a lot of people who wouldn't like this. But I've learned through using it for a while now that I am just not a super sparkly eyeshadow person. And it took me purchasing this and trying a really sparkly eyeshadow to learn that about myself, but now I know that this is not something that I need to purchase in the future. Because for me personally, sparkly eyeshadows just look really extreme on my face. I think because I have low contrast features, these really sparkly shadows look really intense and just grab a lot of attention and really take away from the other features of my face. I think if you have higher contrast in your features, then you can really pull off a sparkly eyeshadow and it can be your preference. But for me, I've realized that this is just something that I probably would only wear for special occasions. And even for special occasions, like recently I went to a wedding, I chose not to wear a super sparkly eyeshadow because it just felt a little too over the top. And what I really prefer instead is something with more of a satin shimmer finish. So for example, this one in here in this other flower nose palette is much more subtle and less sparkly. And this is really a lot more realistic for me to wear, both on a daily basis, but also for special occasions. Realistically, I'm just not going to reach for the sparkly eyeshadows much, and it really is only reserved for me for like a party or going out, which I rarely ever do. So again, this is an item for my fantasy self. And I've just realized recently that sparklier does not necessarily mean better for me as far as eyeshadows go. So this is something that I'll be conscious of in the future, and it's not to say that I'm totally against sparkly eyeshadows, but I just want something that is a little bit more subtle and a little bit more wearable for me on a daily basis. So along these same lines, the next makeup item that I will not be purchasing in the future are eyeshadow palettes. These are all the eyeshadow palettes that I have ever owned in my life, and this Ilia one was the first one that I ever owned. And though I did like this eyeshadow palette, if I'm being totally honest with myself, I only reached for this organically maybe twice since I purchased it. And I had this for probably at least 5 years. So this is just not an item that I reach for outside of special occasions. And I found that even for special occasions, I would end up reaching for a one and done eyeshadow instead. So instead of this palette here, I would typically reach for this Lisa Eldridge liquid eyeshadow in the color Angelica. I really enjoyed this, and I found it just a lot easier to pack if I was traveling for a wedding, let's say. And it's so easy to use and super quick, and all I need is this one eyeshadow with no primer or anything else. Whereas using a palette is a lot more work and takes a lot of time. And I have just realized about myself that I am never getting ready for a special event in a leisurely way. I'm always rushing and on the verge of being late. So I never have time to do a full eyeshadow look, and that's why I always prefer to reach for makeup items like this instead. I reach for makeup out of convenience and how easy and quick it is, and eyeshadow palettes, while fun and tempting, they really are for my fantasy self. Because they are not quick and easy. They take time and some skill and some bit of planning ahead as far as time management goes. And that is just not realistic for my life and how I tend to function. So I also recently purchased these two flower nose palettes here, which I already talked about. And these, again, if I'm being realistic, were purchases for my fantasy self. And now, following the same train of thought, the next item of makeup that I will not be purchasing in the future is anything that uses brushes. And this is outside of all of my base makeup items. So for example, my foundation, concealer, and setting powder are all items that I enjoy using brushes for. But outside of those three things, I do not want to own any makeup products where I have to use brushes for them. So again, this goes for all of these eyeshadow palettes here. I have to use eyeshadow brushes, and again, it is just more tedious and takes more time. And I will always prefer to use something where I can just use my hands. It is so much easier and so much quicker, and I don't enjoy having to wash brushes all the time. So that's something that I need to keep in mind for the future. I've recently been on this crusade against kind of cream products that go bad quickly, and that's really again why I ended up purchasing these eyeshadow palettes rather than going the route of a one and done liquid eyeshadow. I wanted something that would last longer and not go bad as quickly, but I've just come to realize that I will always prefer a liquid eyeshadow where I don't have to use a brush and I can just use my hands. Same thing goes for example blush. So I have this blush here that I've had forever, and I barely ever used this, and the main reason why is because I have to use a brush. I will just always choose to reach for my cream blushes over a powder one because I can just use my hands. And I've gotten so much use out of blushes like this Merit one and this Ilia one because I was just able to use my hands and swipe it really quickly on my cheeks and then blend it out. Or I can take my finger and apply it that way. But that is just so much easier for me and so much more enjoyable of a process as far as doing my makeup goes. And I just will always choose to do this over choosing to use a brush. And I think why my products like my foundation and concealer kind of differ from this is because the brushes make the process a lot quicker and easier, whereas things like my eyeshadow and my blush are a lot quicker and easier for me to just use my hands. So that is my preference, and going forward, I will not be purchasing any powder blushes. Another example is with this solo eyeshadow from Merit. So this is in the color Nelson, and this is the one that I was using for my eyeliner. So I even purchased a special brush for this. I purchased this brush from Merit that is supposed to be used with the solo shadow, and I purchased it specifically for this little tiny end here that I would use for my eyeliner. And it did work really well, and I enjoyed it. But I've just come to realize that I will not reach for a product as much if I have to use a brush. And I'd much prefer to have a pencil eyeliner that is really quick and easy, because also this brush would get stiff after using it for eyeliner and I would have to clean it. Otherwise, when I applied my eyeliner the next time, it wouldn't apply as well if it was dirty. So that's just something that I don't want to spend time on. I don't want to spend my time washing brushes. It's a task that I really don't enjoy doing. So in the future, I definitely will not be purchasing any makeup items where I need to use a brush outside of my foundation, powder, and concealer. So again, similar to the last category of things that use brushes, I will not be purchasing anything that is hard to use. So I have a few items here that I would consider hard to use. The first one is a liquid eyeliner, and liquid eyeliner used to be my makeup of choice for special occasions. I used to do a winged cat eye, but I have just come to realize that it is way too hard for me to use on a regular basis. And even for special occasions, again, I usually am in a rush and I don't enjoy using a liquid eyeliner. It is way too finicky and it can make me kind of frustrated to do and try to get it to look good. So this is an item that I would consider hard to use, and I will not be purchasing any liquid eyeliners in the future. Another item is this Ilia liquid eyeshadow, and this eyeshadow just does not blend out very well. It is very patchy and it doesn't layer very well on itself, and it's another item that I get very frustrated when I use. It is definitely not like the Lisa Eldridge one, which is so easy and you really can't mess up. This Ilia one, you can definitely mess up. And I just don't have the patience for makeup like this anymore, and I can't purchase any makeup that will not be enjoyable and really foolproof when I use it. It's also important for me that makeup items work really well with everything else in my collection. So if there's one item that doesn't play well with other stuff, and maybe it pills or maybe it doesn't layer well, those are items that I do not want to have in my collection. And I actually don't have a good example of this right now because this is something that I actively try to avoid with my makeup purchases. So luckily I don't have anything right now that doesn't play well with my other products, but I do have an example of a product that actually works really well and is very versatile with any look that I'm doing. And that is the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Matte Beauty Blush Wand. This one, even though it says it's matte, it really takes on the texture of whatever makeup you have on underneath, and it layers really well on top of anything or under anything. So this is definitely an example of a product that has a finish that is really user-friendly, and that makes it really enjoyable to use. There is absolutely no frustration when using this product, except with the packaging a little bit, which gets me into my next point of things being hard to use, is that even though I like the finish and the application of this product, I don't love the packaging. I do enjoy this sort of stamping tool that you use where I can just dot this onto my skin and then blend it out. But I don't like how to get more product out, I have to open this up and squeeze it. And this part gets so messy. It gets all over my fingers and it also gets kind of slippery, so it gets hard to open. And this is a point of frustration with this packaging that I really don't enjoy. So because of that, even though I absolutely love the formula of this product, this probably won't be something that I will repurchase in the future simply because of the packaging. This Clinique Black Honey is another example of packaging that I find a little frustrating to use and a little harder. And it's just because the size of this bullet is so thin that the tip of it is really prone to breaking off. So this is something that I can't press too hard when I'm applying, even though I want to press hard because I want to get more pigment. So it just makes for kind of a frustrating user experience. And for that reason alone, I probably wouldn't purchase Clinique Black Honey in the future. So definitely any items that are hard to use as far as packaging or having to use a brush, or if the application and blendability is not good, those are items of makeup that I will not be purchasing in the future. And talking about packaging, next are any items that are fussy to reapply. So usually for me, this has to do with the application method and sometimes the packaging, and also whether I need a mirror to apply it. So I love a tinted lip balm in theory, and this is the Ilia one in the color Wanderlust. But because these are so pigmented, I learned that these are items that I can't just apply on the go casually, which kind of for me defeats the purpose of a tinted lip balm. So I will always prefer a tinted lip balm that's a lot easier to use. And my example of this is with the Burt's Bees Red Dahlia. This is an item that I reach for all the time. And it's because it is so subtle and I really do not need a mirror to apply this. So I'm able to reapply it super easily, and that makes it a lot more convenient for me, and I end up just reaching for this all the time. And this is what I will always prefer to buy now over something like a really pigmented tinted lip balm. And same for the Clinique Black Honey. Again, it's because of the packaging just being kind of thin and easily prone to breaking, but also because of the pigment level in this lip balm. I feel like this is another product where I need a mirror to reapply it. So this isn't something that is super convenient for me, and because of that, I tend to not reach for this item as much. The same goes for anything with a doe foot applicator. So while I really enjoy both of these products, this is the Rare Beauty Glossy Balm and the Dior Lip Glow Oil, I actually get a ton of use out of the Rare Beauty Glossy Balms because they are easier to reapply on the go because the pigment level isn't super high. So I don't need a mirror necessarily to reapply it, but I find doe foot applicators just a little bit more fussy to reapply and something that I don't necessarily casually have thrown in my purse. I don't really bring them on the go unless it's for a special occasion. And then with this Dior Lip Glow Oil, the packaging just seems so kind of over the top and bougie that this isn't necessarily an item that I want to pull out of my purse and reapply when I'm out in public. Again, I use it for special occasions and it's easy to reapply without a mirror, but the packaging just feels a little bit more fussy, and because of that, these aren't products that I reach for as much. What I will reach for instead of these is a squeezy tube lip balm. So I have my two Ole Henriksen Pout Preserve Peptide Lip Treatments here, and I reach for these all the time. And it's not something that I have to think about to reach for. I just organically reach for these because they're so easy to use, and I can use them on the go, but they're also glossy enough to use for special occasions. So they're super versatile, and the packaging just feels more casual and easier to use. And that is a huge factor in why I get so much more use out of these than something like my Rare Beauty Glossy Balm. So definitely any product that is fussy to reapply, specifically talking about lips here, I'm going to try to not purchase in the future. The next item of makeup that I'm going to talk about for very similar reasons are statement lips. So I own only a couple statement lips, and I have these two Merit lipsticks in the color Fashion and Power. So Fashion is a really pretty kind of fuchsia berry color, whereas Power is a really cool toned red. They're both very beautiful and I enjoy playing with them, but I've come to realize that I just am not a statement lip person. Again, this is an item for my fantasy self and something that I thought that I needed to own in order to have a complete makeup collection, but because they are just a little bit more finicky to apply and reapply, I always think that I will wear these for special occasions, but I never do. I always choose to reach for something that's a lot easier, and lately I've been reaching for this Rare Beauty Glossy Balm for special occasions because it's so easy to throw in my purse and reapply. But I never reach for a statement lip outside of just playing with it while I'm staying home for the day. And while I really like the idea of having a red lipstick, I've also just learned about myself that, again, because I have low contrast features, a really bold red lip really just does not suit me. It really commands a lot of attention on my face and really kind of detracts from my other features. So it's just not something that I really reach for regularly. And if I am wearing a red lip, then it needs to be very blotted out and very subtle. And same goes for fashion. It's a very beautiful color, but I think typically I will just reach for something that blends into my skin tone a little bit better and just feels more wearable for me on a daily basis. I've come to realize that if I do want a statement lip look, then typically I will reach for something like the Clinique Black Honey. And this is very subtle and natural looking, but if I build it up enough, this actually looks like a statement lip on me. And again, it's because I have very low contrast features, but this for me is a much more wearable statement lipstick. So while these two Merit lipsticks are really pretty and fun to play with, I realistically never reach for them organically. And I will always reach for something like the Clinique Black Honey instead. And statement lipsticks are just an item for my fantasy self. The next item of makeup that I will not purchase in the future are lip liners. And I know that this is something that a lot of people really enjoy and they really live by their lip liner, but I've just come to realize that lip liners are not for me for very similar reasons why statement lipsticks are also not for me. Because I have such low contrast features again, lip liners just really do not suit me and they look a little too harsh on my face. They command a lot of attention and they look really out of place. And I've just learned that it's an item for my fantasy self that I never realistically reach for. It's just another step that makes my life a little harder and I prefer to just wear lip gloss with no lip liner. I never owned lip liners before these two here. I think I had maybe one red lip liner that, again, I would only use for special occasions if I was happening to wear a red lipstick. But that was years ago, and these are the only lip liners that I've owned since then. And I probably have organically reached for these 0 times. I don't think I've ever organically reached for a lip liner. I've only used them when I've been playing around with makeup at home. So this isn't an item that I need, and it is 100% for my fantasy self. I just saw everyone online using lip liners and loving them, and I felt like I needed to try one. And I tried too, and I still don't love lip liners. The next category of makeup that I will no longer purchase is anything for the eyes that is clean beauty. If you're new here, I recently got an eye infection this past year from using this eye primer right here. This is so old and it is clean beauty, being from Ilia. They don't even make this anymore, but I used it on my eyes this past year to test out whether I wanted to declutter it or not. And I ended up getting an eye infection and having to deal with that for at least a month. It was not fun, to say the least. And it taught me that clean beauty is not something that I want to mess around with when it comes to my eyes. I want to make sure that I have all the preservatives in my eye makeup so that I'm not risking any eye infection if it is a little bit past its expiration date. And I'm trying to get better about not using makeup that's expired, especially around my eyes. But for every single one of these products, I was not able to finish them before they expired. And because they're clean beauty, it is not worth risking using them anymore. So I feel like I can't get my money's worth out of them because they're clean beauty and because they go around my eyes and it's not worth the risk. And this is a category of makeup that I will not be purchasing in the future. So give me all the preservatives. I also will no longer be purchasing any brow pencils. I have this Kosas Brow Pop in the color taupe, and while I do really like it, I've owned this for probably over 3 years now, and I have only organically reached for this maybe 3 times. I rarely ever use a brow pencil because my brows are already thick enough as it is, and I like their natural shape, so typically I'll just use a clear brow gel, and that's all I do to my brows. But this is something that I only use for special occasions, and even recently for special occasions, I ended up skipping this step because I ran out of time. And this is actually the first brow pencil that I've ever owned. Before I owned this one, if I overplucked my eyebrows a little bit and needed to fill a hole, then for special occasions, I would just use my eyeliner and just kind of dot it in where the hole was and blend it out, and you would never be able to tell. So after I eventually use this one up or declutter it, I will just go back to doing that method of using my eyeliner as a brow pencil when I'm in a pinch, but otherwise I never ever organically reach for a brow pencil. So this is not something that I will repurchase in the future. Next up are bronzers and contours. These are both things that I won't purchase again in the future because I just never reach for them organically. So I have this little blush that I already talked about, and I repurposed this as a bronzer this past year before I eventually decided to declutter it. And then I also have this Milk Makeup contour stick. These are both perfectly fine products, but outside of testing them to see if they would work for me as a bronzer and a contour, I never reached for them organically. I probably reached for this one as a bronzer organically once, and again, that was just for a special occasion. But I've just learned about myself that bronzers and contours really don't suit me. A lot of times they look too orange or a little too dull and brown, and they just don't suit my complexion. So these are not products that I will purchase in the future, and instead I will always just get a blush that I can also use as a bronzer. And for me right now, that is the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Blush Wand. This is a color that works really well for me as both a blush and a bronzer. So something in this color family is what I would purchase in the future because I rarely ever just use a bronzer on its own. I've actually never owned a bronzer, and I don't think that I need to own one in the future. The next thing that I will no longer purchase is any makeup that is not in my color season. So I am a soft summer, and I have known for a while that warmer makeup does not suit my complexion. It always looks very orange and very out of place. But I've also come to realize more recently that even if makeup is cool toned, if it is higher in intensity, then it is not something that I enjoy reaching for. So all of these products here are cool toned but higher intensity. So I already talked about this Merit lipstick in the color Power. It is a very cool toned red, but it is higher intensity and is just a lot harder for me to wear. This would definitely suit a winter a lot more, but as a soft summer, I really need that softness in my makeup. Same goes for this Merit blush in the color Rouge. This is a really neutral red that looks good on pretty much all skin tones, and it doesn't necessarily look bad on me, but I have to be so careful when applying this that I don't apply too much because it can go clownish very quickly on me. And because it's a makeup product that I can mess up when using and accidentally over apply, it's just not something that I tend to reach for as much just because of that reason. I will always choose one of my other blushes over this one unless I'm making a conscious effort to use this one up, which I have been doing more recently for my Project Pan. But outside of Project Pan, I probably never reached for this blush organically, or I very rarely did, and I would always choose something like Beverly Hills over this one. And the same thing can be said for this Ilia blush in the color of Fine Romance. So I got this one because I thought that I needed a berry blush in my collection. And again, it is very cool toned, very beautiful, but it's another one that can look a little too intense on my skin tone, and I have to be really careful about not applying too much. I've already decluttered it because it's very expired, but I barely used any of this. I would always reach for my other colors over this one, and I learned that it was just because of how intense it is, and it is too intense for my skin tone. So I will no longer be buying any makeup that is not in my color season because realistically, I will not wear it. Next up is anything with a strong scent. So I already try to stay away from scented products, and these are two here that I decluttered simply because of the scent. So this Kosas Wet Lip Oil kind of smells like vanilla, but it's sort of a sweeter vanilla cupcake. It's not like a true vanilla bean. And I kind of liked the scent when I first purchased it, or at least I didn't really mind it. But as time went on, I started to dislike it more and more. And I started to associate the scent of this with when I would be wearing it, which happened to be for a bachelorette party that I went to. And there was a lot of drinking going on, and I wore this that whole weekend. And now I just have kind of negative associations with this scent. I associate it with being drunk and not feeling too great. So, but that tends to happen a lot for me for scented products, is that even if I like it in the beginning, if I start to have a negative association with the scent, then I just find that I stop reaching for that product. And then this e.l.f. Core Shine Lip Balm is a product that I never liked the scent of. I didn't know it would have a scent when I purchased it, and I figured there was no risk in trying it because it was so cheap, and I was pretty certain that I'd like the color of it, which I do. But yeah, the smell of this is so bad. It's not necessarily a super strong scent, but it just smells like plastic and the off-gassing of plastic. It's just a really unpleasant scent that I don't like. And it's also a scent that I could kind of taste on my lips when I applied it, and it was very bitter and just something that I really did not enjoy. So I probably only used this product 2 or 3 times before I decluttered it, simply because of the scent. So now going into the future, I am very careful to only buy products that are unscented or that I'm able to smell in the store and confirm that I like the scents of. So for example, again, my Ole Henriksen lip balms. I prefer the strawberry one. The cocoa cream one isn't my favorite scent again, which is why I reach for the strawberry one a lot more. But scents are definitely something that I have to take into account when purchasing makeup. If it's a scent that I won't like, or a really strong scent that could give me a headache, then I just should not be purchasing it because it will go to waste. Okay, so I just have a couple more categories here, and the second to last category is anything that is hard to remove. So I don't have a great example of this in my collection right now because this is something that I've known about myself for a while. A lot of times, if I'm not wearing a full face of makeup, which typically most days I am not, then I don't want to add that step into my routine at the end of the night of taking off all my makeup and double cleansing and making sure that it's all off. I want to make sure that all of my makeup is really easy to remove and that I don't have to rub at my eyes to remove anything. So this Laura Mercier Caviar Stick is the closest thing that I have to something that is a little bit harder to remove. And this one's a lighter color. This is the color Strapless. So it's not as big of a deal, and it seems like it's a little bit easier to remove. But even though this is a great everyday color for me, I rarely ever found myself reaching for it because I knew that I'd have to take a little bit more effort at the end of the night to remove it. And that's just something that I don't enjoy doing. And because I know this about myself, I know that I should never purchase any of those Asian mascaras that are notoriously hard to remove and where you need a special makeup remover, because I just know myself and I know that that is something that I don't want in my makeup. Sometimes I just want to wash my face once and be done with it. And if I'm having to rub at my eyes and wash my face multiple times and use a special makeup remover, then that is a makeup item that will not get a lot of use in my collection. So definitely something that I try to avoid. So my final category of makeup that I will no longer purchase is anything that is more than what I can realistically use. So this here are all of the blushes that I had in my collection before I started doing my declutter in my project pan this past year. So I had 10 blushes total, which probably to a lot of people maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but I have never finished a blush. So I have since decluttered these 5 here, but I'm still working on these and I have yet to finish any of them. I'm not even close. So if I open all of these, you can get a better sense of how much blush I am actually able to use and how much was left over before I decided to declutter them. But you can see here that I didn't finish any of these. I got a decent amount of use out of these 2 Ilia blushes here, but these 2 here, A Fine Romance and Tenderly, I barely ever used. And as soon as I purchased some of my Merit blushes and my Pillow Talk, I pretty much completely stopped using the Ilia ones because then I preferred the formula of these and I hadn't used this powder blush. As soon as I got these cream blushes, this one went in a drawer and was forgotten about for years. And you can see I didn't make a dent on this at all. I think I used it maybe a decent amount of times several years ago. But again, as soon as I got all of these cream blushes, which I now know is my preference because of how easy they are to use, I never reached for the powder one. But I think my blush is a great example of having way more of something than what I can realistically use. I've been working on these 4 Merit blushes in my project pan this past year, and this Beverly Hills one is the one that I've made the most progress on, but I've been using this very consistently for several years now, probably 2 to 3 years, and there's probably still enough in here to last me at least another year if I were to use it daily. I would not be surprised if I have that much left. So you can imagine when I look at something like this rouge color, which again I said that I can't use very much of because I start to look clownish, this alone, if I used it every day, would probably take me 5 years to fully use up. And of course, it'll probably expire before then, but it just goes to show that I do not need to own this many blushes. Once you realize how long something takes to use up, it really puts things in a different perspective. And I can't help but think about all the money wasted and also the time that I spend trying to use up products that I don't really love, when I have plenty of other items that I love more and are expiring as I'm trying to use up other things. So in the future, I will not be buying any more than what I can realistically use. So that's it for all of the makeup that I won't be purchasing anymore in the future. I try to keep this list in mind to prevent any purchases that are solely for my fantasy self and purchases that really aren't the smartest or best decisions. And again, it has taken trial and error for me to get to this point. It has taken years of purchasing products that didn't really work for me in order to create this list and figure out what does and doesn't work. But I think because I'm able to reflect on these past purchases and really decipher what did and didn't work for me, I think as long as I'm able to take those reflections into my future decisions, then I have no regrets and all that I can do is move forward from here. So definitely some lessons learned and things that I will keep in mind for the future. But is there any makeup that you have stopped buying because it just doesn't make sense for you? Or is there anything that you are reconsidering whether you even need? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm really curious what your list looks like. And thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.